Hello everyone, in this video I'm going to go over the big case study 1, and in this big case study 1 you analyze the child abuse or preventing child abuse case, and you try to provide some recommendations to Bradley Patton, and Bradley Patton was trying to solve some problems, and you basically use the tools that you learned in the structural dimension to provide some solutions to Bradley Patton's problems. Um, in this video, I'm going to go over some different aspects of this case. I'm not going to answer all the questions that I asked you in the case, but rather address some other issues that were not included in this case. And specifically, I'm going to talk about issues such as the politics of the administrative structure, such as institutional isomorphism, and also the tension between managerial practices and the legal system or the rule of law. First of all, let's identify what happened in this case. I'm just going to provide you a brief overview of the case. There are a lot of details that are left over, so just focus on the broader picture. In the broader picture, we have the federal government, that is HEW. Then we have the state government, that is consisting of the executive branch, the legislative branch, and the judicial branch. I hope you can see it. And under the executive branch, we focus on the Secretary of Human Resources, that is Bradley Patton. And Bradley Patton must solve some problems. Okay? And under the Secretary of HR, we have the Department of Welfare, which is split into two separate departments. First one is assistance payments, the second one is social services. And Bradley Patton must find a director for the Department of Social Services. His problem is he's running out of time, and he doesn't know how to transfer employees from Department of Welfare to Social Services, Department of Social Services, because of a lot of factors. One of the important factors that influenced Bradley Patton's decision is the death of Jane Barber. After this 2-year-old girl died, a lot of pressure started coming from external sources, such as Children's Service Association, also the media started paying it a lot of attention, and employee unions were also involved in the transfer of employees from Department of Welfare to Department of Social Services. So let's start to analyze this case from the politics of the administrative structure perspective. Well, in the politics of administrative structure idea, that was developed by Terry Moore, by the way, the politicians, which is legislative and head of the executive branch, the bureaucrats, and the interest groups, they pursue their own interests in one way or another. And the whole political system, whole administrative system, is kind of an interplay between these three actors. And every actor must compromise to accomplish kind of an equilibrium point in which everybody will function more or less in an effective way. So the politics of the administrative structure here is that politicians push for a change within the Department of Welfare. They would like to split the agency into assistance payments and social services. And interest groups such as Media and Children's Services Association, also the unions, employee unions, they push for their own agenda. They push this transformation in a certain way. For example, Children's Service Association, they would like to see more skilled employees under Social Services, Department of Social Services, because the death of Jane Barber was because of perhaps negligence of an employee in their view, and employees were not up to the skills required for carrying out these tasks, so they would like to see more skilled employees, and they were pushing for higher education standards for employees who will work under social services. So they were kind of requiring a master's degree in social service, or kind of an equal level of education for people who will work under this agency. So that was kind of their own agenda. Employee unions were trying to protect their members, so they were pushing for some level of protection for employees who would be transferred to social services. So they were, for example, against undue hardship on employees and requiring some level of too high standards for transferring employees and so on. The other issue is So this is kind of the relationship between Children's Service Association, the, um, the unions, the politicians. Also, politicians remember grandfathered legislation to make sure that whoever goes to the social services department um, will go first. Will be picked from first of all from Department of Welfare. If someone does not go from here to here, if there's an opening, then they will hire somebody else from outside. So that was kind of the the the, um, the legislation that was grandfathered by a politician. And also bureaucrats were experiencing some low morale. They didn't know what to do at that point, and they felt like because of this restructuring, they were being targeted, and they also felt like they're being left behind. And then you had Bradley Patton, and you had some other middle managers in this case as well, which I did not include here. Here you see how all these three actors or set of actors interplay with each other. The interest groups, the politicians, the bureaucrats, trying to find a way to implement this restructuring, and Bradley Patton cannot resolve this problem within a given period of time, so he has to postpone his decision to hire a director for the Department of Social Services. So this is the first point. This is the politics of the administrative structure. The second point is isomorphism, institutional isomorphism. Isomorphism is basically mimicking another organization, an external source, for structural purposes. What does it mean? Here, let me explain what happens. The federal government agency, HEW, they split their services into two pieces. One piece is delivering social services, the other one is providing financial assistance. So they start making this separation at the federal level, and the separation at the federal level influenced state agencies, and state agencies follow the same pattern, and they split their services just as the federal government agency. Why did they do it? It's not necessarily because of some technical rationality. I don't think the politicians really sat down and thought that, well, probably we will be better if we split this agency into two pieces. Probably it didn't happen that way. The way it happened was because the federal agency made this structural reorganization. We have to make this structural reorganization in order to get more federal funding from this federal agency. So we see a kind of mimicking of an external agency, because this state agency depends on federal grant monies for its operations. So you see external dependence, resource dependence on a different agency causes mimicking of that agency. So this is what we call isomorphism, and there are three different types of isomorphism. DiMaggio and Pavel mentioned. I'm not going to go into the detail, but the idea here is that an agency mimics another institution because of dependence on that institution, not based on some rational decision-making process. So the idea here is that organizations, bureaucracies are not necessarily rational institutions. They sometimes mindlessly follow other organizations because they depend on these organizations. And finally, I would like to mention the tension between the legal system, the law, and management. Remember when Jane Barber died, this 2-year-old girl died, the employee Gail Harrison was fired because she was the person who was in charge of the case of Jane Barber. However, the employee union, they filed a petition to appeal this decision, and actually, the judicial branch, they reinstated Gail Harrison back to her job. So here we see how the legal system, or the judicial branch, or the law, intervenes in the practice of management. Here we see that there's kind of a tension between management practices and law. Sometimes courts, sometimes these legal institutions can intervene in the business of management, and that creates some level of tension. So these are the 3 points that I wanted to mention about this case. Most of you guys did a good job in analyzing the case, answered the questions that I provided to you almost perfectly, and But I just wanted to expand the case and mention some other points that we could explore in this case. Again, let me repeat again. There are three important points that I highlighted. The first one is the politics of the administrative structure, the interplay between interest groups, politicians, and bureaucracies, and isomorphism, how the structural change in the federal government influenced structural change at the state level, and the tension between law and management. Okay, so these are my brief points about this case. I hope you all enjoyed this lecture, this video, and please let me know if you have any questions, and I look forward to hearing from you. Take care.